I've never been in jail. I've never been a drug dealer. I've never been a serial killer. I've never been in a gang. I just don't have a very interesting story to tell. And then on the other end of the spectrum, I have maybe a little more serious and heavy. I have people saying, well, I have some really heavy things in my story that I'm not sure that it would be hard for me to share, or I'm not proud of. And I get both ends of that spectrum, but my encouragement to you is let's focus on the main character in your story. And the main character in your story is not you, right? And for those of you who are like, I have a boring story, I'm like, have you considered all the things that you've been saved from? Maybe he didn't deliver you from it because you never were like in the middle of it, but you were still saved from it, right? And for those of you who are struggling to maybe share some darker parts of your story, first of all, we would never make you share anything you're not comfortable sharing. But second of all, what I would encourage you to do is find the joy in what you've been delivered from, right? Let's focus on that, right? So again, my vision for this is that you'll come share your story and you'll invite people to come hear you share your story, and we can maybe extend some more compassion and grace to each other because of that and in that. And so I'm just hoping good things will come from that. So I've had some response, but not near the response I'd love to have from that. Okay, we don't have a shortage to share today, but hopefully next week we will. So as we continue on in our story, our series, Encounters with Jesus, I want to ask you to consider this question. What labels or titles or names do you wear in your life? Ponder that question for just a moment. What hats do you wear? Some of those hats may be hats that you wear proudly, that you're excited about. It's a positive part of your identity that you're glad is there. And you might have some labels that have been ascribed to you by other people that you're not so excited about. And if it were in your control, you would say, nope, I don't want that, right? So let me just some examples here. What are some examples of titles that we have? Well, we have some titles in our life just based on the relationships we have with other people, right? I am a son. I'm a husband. I'm a father. I'm an older brother. I'm a friend, right? We have some titles like that. Sometimes we have titles based on what we do, our professions, our careers. I'm a middle school math teacher. For the time being, I'm an interim pastor, right? I can tell you, as I reflect back on that label of being a middle school math teacher, that when students walk into my room, before they've ever met me, before they even know my name, they have some things they believe about me just because of that title, right? We have titles we wear because of things we like to do, our hobbies, our pastimes. I'm a golfer. Not me. That was pointing to Earl back there. He's a golfer. I am a hiker. I love to hike in the wintertime. I am a treadmill runner. Okay, I use that term really loosely. I'm not a runner, but I will get on my treadmill every once in a while. These are things I like to do. We have titles about the level of maybe of authority that we possess in a certain position. We have titles related to our religion. I am a Christian. I'm a Christ follower. Not only that, because of my membership in this church, I'm a Southern Baptist, right? We have, based on where we live, we have titles. I am an American. I am a Missourian. Based on the era that I was born in, I am Gen X. And because of that, my daughter tells me I am also Unk. Unk, are you familiar with the term Unk? If not, ask Taryn. She will inform you about all of that, all right? We have titles based upon our convictions and our opinions, our politics, about the trauma that we've experienced in life. We have labels and titles that we bear based on like our physical health and diagnoses that have been given to us, based on our mental health. In the same way, we have titles about our gender, and even today in our sexuality. There's so many, we could keep going, right? So many titles we wear. I even think about, again, back to middle school. And I think about even earlier than middle school, and conversations I had with maybe more so my daughters than Harrison, my son, but just this issue when you're in school, one label that is often ascribed to people, even children, they are popular, they are not popular. You familiar with that term, right? Makes me think of the Wicked, the song in Wicked, if you're familiar with that musical. Labels, I want to tell you this morning, are not inherently bad. Like, I'm not here to criticize labels. Labels, I think in many ways, it's how we make sense of life. Sometimes it's how we just connect to other people. Sometimes it's even how we appreciate other people, right? We are label makers, are we not? But sometimes labels can be a bad thing. Sometimes we use labels to protect ourselves. Sometimes we use labels to distance ourselves. Sometimes we use labels to elevate ourselves above others in such a way that it becomes just this constant comparison game, right? Where I'm constantly classifying and judging and categorizing people and comparing them to me. And if I can find a way to kind of elevate myself above somebody else, then I feel good. I maybe experience some pride and even some arrogance in that moment as I'm trying to ascribe some value to myself. Or sometimes I come across somebody else and it's clear that they are better than me. And what do I do with that? Well, sometimes I might just find something about them that I'm going to dwell on that drives me crazy, some flaw about them that I'm really going to just magnify so that I can feel a little bit better about that. Or sometimes if I just can't do that, I'm just going to try to connect myself to your greatness. Celebrity worship and things of that nature. If I just get close enough to you, maybe some of your goodness and greatness can rub off on me. That's a label I want to share with you. Sometimes we take our labels and we try to talk about people in terms of us versus them. And we become recruiters. And we try to get, hey, come wear my label. Come join us. You don't want to be a part of them. Be a part of us. In fact, I'm quite sure I could list some labels that would really frustrate some of you this morning. That your first emotional gut reaction to some of the labels I could mention would be like, "Rrr." Right? In our encounters with Jesus this morning, we're going to talk about a very familiar passage in which Jesus was willing to cut right through all of that. Just walks right through any kind of barrier, label, title, name you could put upon a person. He saw through it all to meet someone right where they were at. So if you want to follow along with me, I'm going to be in John chapter 4. I believe that the verses will be on the screen if you want to follow along there, but you know how I do it. I'll kind of read a verse and we'll talk, and read a verse and we'll talk. Look wherever you want to look. So this is, again, the familiar passage about the Samaritan woman, the woman at the well. And I want to encourage you, as we read through this, look for labels. Look for labels in this passage, all right? See if you can catch them. Chapter 4, verse 1. Now Jesus learned that the Pharisees, label, had heard that he was gaining and baptizing more disciples than John, although in fact it was not Jesus who baptized, but his disciples. So he left Judea, he went back once more to Galilee. So already we have the label of the Pharisees, but we also have the labels of, okay, are you John's disciple? Are you Jesus' disciple? Here's a label by just who baptized you. Did one of Jesus' disciples baptize you? So he's wanting to avoid some conflict with the Pharisees at this point in his ministry. So he's in Judea, south, and he's going to go up to Galilee, but he's got to cut right through Samaria. Verse 5. So he came to a town in Samaria called Sychar, near the plot of ground Jacob had given to his son Joseph. Jacob's well was there, and Jesus, tired as he was from the journey, sat down by the well. It was about noon. I love just take a moment and don't miss that, where Jesus is described as being tired, like right there in the middle of his humanity. He's worn out. And he's traveling through Samaria. Now again, if you've been in church world much at all, you know about Samaria, right? So Samaria is an area, okay, we have these Samaritans that are part Jewish and part Canaanite, part Jewish and part Assyrian. And because of that, the pureblood Jews look down upon them. You're a mixed breed. And not only that, not only was their blood mixed, but their religion was a bit mixed with the Canaanite and Assyrian religion as well. And so they were looked upon as heretics. So the Jews, in regard to the Samaritans, they were very arrogant and just didn't really want to give them the time of day. They felt like they would be compromised or become unclean if they were hanging out with the Samaritans. So, and it's about noon. Did you take notice of the time of day? All right? It's hot, hottest part of the day, right? So in verse 7, when a Samaritan woman came to draw water, Jesus said to her, now let's just pause for just a moment and let's think about the perspective of this Samaritan woman. She's coming to draw water at the hottest part of the day. Do you think she's expecting to see anybody? She's trying to avoid any kind of crowd. She's trying to be there by herself. And from a distance, almost certainly from a distance, she sees this man leaning up against this well. And can you imagine, like, I don't want to deal with this. And as she gets closer, not only does she notice this man, but she knows, okay, this is a Jewish man. This is not going to go well. But Jesus initiates the contact. He initiates the conversation. He says to her, will you give me a drink? His disciples had gone into town to buy food. So Jesus, right here in this moment, crosses a gender boundary. Okay, we're not proud to say this, but in this era of history, in this region, that women were seen as less than men, right? For Jesus to talk to a woman in public that he had never met before is almost scandalous, right? What he should have done is just ignore her presence. He cuts right through the gender boundary. He cuts right through the religious boundary. He cuts right through the ethnic boundary. And he speaks to her and says, will you give me a drink of water? The Samaritan woman is not going to let him get away with this. He's not going to let him ignore those labels. So she says in verse 9, you are a Jew, label, and I'm a Samaritan, label, woman, label. How can you ask me for a drink? How can you talk to me? For Jews did not associate with Samaritans. Jesus answered her, verse 10, if you knew the gift of God and who it is that asks you for a drink, you would have asked him and he would have given you living water. He doesn't take the bait on the labels, right? He just stays on point. Sir, the woman said, you have nothing to draw with, and the well is deep. Where can you get this living water? Are you greater than our father Jacob, who gave us the well and drank from it himself, as did also his sons and his livestock? In this moment, I wish we could kind of just hear her tone. I wish we could see the expression on her face, because I'm not sure kind of is she just curious? Is she confused? Is she skeptical? We don't really know. Jesus answers, everyone who drinks this water will be thirsty again. But whoever drinks the water I give them will never thirst. Indeed, the water I give them will become in them a spring of water welling up to eternal life, almost as if, hey, if you take the living water, not only will you be satisfied, but you will be a source of water and life for others. And so the woman, okay, she's intrigued. Verse 15, the woman said to him, sir, give me this water so that I won't get thirsty and have to keep coming here to draw water. So she doesn't quite get it, but she's interested. And here, Jesus pivots. He seems to almost change the subject. He told her, go, call your husband and come back. She says, I have no husband. Jesus says, oh, yeah, I know. You're right when you say you have no husband. The fact is, you have had 5 husbands, and the man you are now with, the man you now have, is not your husband. What you have said is quite true. What is Jesus doing here? Is he trying to show off? Is he trying to impress her? Is he trying to show his omniscience to her? Is he trying to embarrass her, shame her? Or is it possible that he has a mirror almost holding up to her and saying, hey, here's where you've tried to find satisfaction. You have tried to find your satisfaction in chasing men. And I just want you to know what I'm offering you is better than that. What I'm offering you is living water. In this moment, she's learned a bit about this Jewish man than what she counted on. Jesus has overflowed the labels that she has affixed to him. She's learned in this moment that Jesus knows her well. knows all about her. In this moment, we can deduct that the same is true for us, right? There's no hiding from our God. There's no hiding. There's no secrets that we can keep from our Savior. Verse 19, the woman continues the conversation. She is eager to change the subject. Sir, the woman said, I can see that you are a prophet. Our ancestors worshipped on this mountain, but you Jews claim the place where we must worship is in Jerusalem. She's trying to draw lines again. She's trying to go back to the labels. Verse 21, woman, Jesus replied, believe me, a time is coming when you will worship the Father, neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem. You Samaritans worship what you do not know. We worship what we do know, for salvation is from the Jews. Yet a time is coming and has now come when the true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and in truth, for they are the kind of worshipers the Father seeks. God, his spirit, and his worshipers must worship in the spirit and in truth. And now we have the label of all labels in this passage, all right? And it comes straight from the woman. The woman said, I know that Messiah, the ultimate label, called Christ, is coming. When he comes, he will explain everything to us. And then Jesus declared, I, the one speaking to you, I am he. That is my label. The disciples returned in that moment, and they kind of interrupt the conversation. The woman leaves, and she is excited about this encounter she's had with Jesus. She goes and she tells her town, come see this man who knows everything about me. And then they're intrigued. So what do? They invite Jesus, come spend some time with us. So again, Jesus doesn't just cross these boundaries with this particular individual woman. He crosses all these boundaries for the entire community, for the entire town. He spends 2 days with them, and they're changed as a result of it. In verse 42, I know I skipped quite a bit there, verse 42, they said to the woman, we no longer believe just because of what you said. Now we have heard for ourselves, and we know that this man really is the Savior of the world. In this encounter, Jesus crosses all kinds of labels and titles and names and boundaries to meet people right where they are. It's not the only time he did this. You could probably give me examples of other times that Jesus crossed boundaries to touch people. I think of the Roman centurion who comes to Jesus, or actually sends word to Jesus. His servant is sick and even paralyzed. Who is this Roman officer? He is a leader in the empire of Rome that is oppressing the Jewish people. Jesus crosses all those boundaries and heals that servant. I think of the sick that Jesus has healed. I think of the lepers. At this time, they viewed leprosy as just an extremely dangerous and highly contagious disease. Jesus crossed through all of that to touch people right where they were and to heal them. I think of what was a common criticism that Jesus faced. The Pharisees. Think of the Pharisees. What's something they often criticized about Jesus? Who are you hanging out with? Jesus, you've been sharing meals with tax collectors and sinners. You remember what Jesus says to that? He's got his own labels, and an answer for that, he says, it's not the healthy. It's not the healthy who need a doctor. It's only the sick. So my question here, and my point of application is this. How do we follow Jesus' example and be able to cross these boundaries, these labels, these titles, to be able to meet people where they are? And the first thing I want us to think about is this. That in order to do this effectively, we are going to have to be super vigilant in our self-awareness. I said earlier, we are label makers. Am I wrong? I mean, we are constantly, every time we meet a person, have an encounter with a person, we are classifying, categorizing, judging, grouping. I mean, we're just doing that. It's a way that we make sense of the world, and it's not all bad. There can be some good in that. But we need to be vigilant in how we are using those labels in a way that determines also how we are ascribing value to people and to ourselves. Because some labels we put on people come with strings attached, right? It changes how we see them. It changes how we view them. It changes how we treat them. We need to be super aware of the motivations of our heart when we put those labels on people. And aware of this, that here's a problem we all have. Or at least we have had, I would say. We have a desire to justify ourselves. We have a desire to compare ourselves to other people and elevate or lower other people so we can make ourselves feel legitimate and valued and worthy. And that might be part of the formula. And when we're labeling people, we have to be super self-aware of that. This self-awareness thing, I'm not so good at. Paul wrote to, I think it was the church at Rome. He says that we should not think more highly of ourselves than we ought. That we should think of ourselves as sober judgment in accordance with the faith God has distributed to each one of us. And I will tell you, I'm not great at that. Like sometimes when I think of myself, I shoot too low. And sometimes I shoot too high. And very rarely do I get it just right. It takes some courage to look in the mirror and really examine the motivation of our heart and consider how we are labeling, how we are naming people, how we're giving people value. Be self-aware. Second thing I want us to think about, we must find our worth and value in the living water of Jesus Christ. What does Jesus offer this woman? See, in that mirror, as he's holding up this mirror to her life, he's saying, yeah, you don't have a husband. You've had 5 husbands, and the 6th guy you're not even married to. He's not shaming her. He's showing her, hey, listen, you will never be satisfied going down this path. This is my second Broadway musical quote. It makes me think of that song, Satisfied, from Hamilton, right? You will never be satisfied going down this path. There is a better path. Here's the path. You're never going to find your worth and your value by chasing men or whatever it is that we're chasing. But here I offer you living water. What is this living water? It's this. I offer you unconditional love that is not based upon your performance. It's based upon how I see you. It's based upon my love for you. When we can accept that living water, we can find true satisfaction. And when we find that true satisfaction, perhaps we will stop competing with the rest of humanity. Perhaps we will stop labeling people in a way to find our value and to devalue them. Third thing I want us to think about today. We must see through all the labels and see others as Christ sees them. Often when I've come across this story, I've kind of given Jesus credit. I've kind of thought, well, man, he just had the courage to break the ice. He had the courage to cross those boundaries and initiate that conversation. It was his personality, it was his confidence. And then as I kind of pondered it this time around, I thought, well, maybe it's not just that, maybe it's more than that. Maybe it was Jesus' perspective more than it was his courage. It's how he saw the woman. So I would ask us, as we look at just all of humanity, what would be the most important label that we should ascribe to people? What should trump every other label or title we give them? I'm going to even go back before that. I'm going to go back to, I love that, I'm going to go back to the opening pages of Genesis. What do we learn about humanity in the opening pages of Genesis? We are created in the image of God. We are image bearers, imago Dei. Every human that has ever walked on this earth, that has ever breathed the air that we breathe, has been created as an image bearer. And that should supersede every other way that we see another human. As such, every human on this planet deserves dignity, worth, significance, regardless of whatever label or title they wear. Are we willing to see everyone in our lives as image bearers, created in God's image? And we learn in this moment, I think, too, between Jesus and the Samaritan woman, is God doesn't just see us in the here and now. God's view of us and God's view of humanity is not bound by time. And we should be encouraged by that, right? Think about that. So God doesn't just see you now. What is the date? August what? 9th. August 9th, 2026. That's not the only way God sees you. God doesn't just see you in your present. God sees you in your past. Well, maybe that's not as comforting. God doesn't see you in your past or your present. God sees you in the future. He sees what you can be, what you will be, what he desires to do in and through you. And can we have the same perspective in people that we cross paths with? I tell you, I go back, this is going to be, I think, my 20th year of teaching in the public school. I saw that. Wow, that's hurtful. That's hurtful. So the 20th year of teaching. And I tell you one thing that I've gotten better at in teaching that I was terrible at in my first few years of teaching is perspective. That when I'm in that classroom with 13 or 14-year-olds and I have those moments where they are just doing something to drive me crazy, and I take a moment to think, but their story's not over. This isn't they're so in the beginning of their story. And so when I can just take a moment and also remember what I was like at that age, and remember the path that I've come through, and I just have hope. I'm just filled with hope for them. When I think about Jeremy, who I talked about earlier, and just how proud I was of Jeremy in that moment, getting married. And there were times in Jeremy's life where I thought, that's never going to happen. That's just not going to happen. But am I willing to have the courage and the maturity to look at all of you and to look at everybody I cross paths with and say, hey, I'm not just going to look at you today. I'm going to consider you what you were, what you are, what you will be. Can we consider looking at each other not bound by time? Are we willing to see beyond a person's labels, behavior, words, attitude, personality, past, present, and future, to see them as God does? I had this thought that sometimes people will put labels on to try to distance us from them. Sometimes labels are unfairly ascribed, but sometimes people put on labels and like, this is, hey, stay away from me label. Are we willing to have the courage and the perspective to see right through that? Sometimes people are just so defined by their hurt and their trauma, it's hard to get close, right? Are we willing to have the courage and the patience and the perspective and the love to see right through all of that and see them as Jesus does? I want to close with words from a commencement speech that I came across. Again, part of the inspiration from this series is from a book by Timothy Keller called Encounters with Jesus, and he references an author by the name of David Foster Wallace. Anybody ever heard of David Foster Wallace? It's okay if you haven't. Am I saying that right? Okay, good. So his most popular book, I think, was Infinite Jest. I haven't read that book, but I want to. The only thing I've read by this author is what we're about to read here. So he is an acclaimed American novelist. He delivered this commencement speech at Kenyon University in Ohio in 2005. He took his own life in 2008. He's no longer with us. His talk is called This Is Water. Now, you're already reading it. You're already ahead of me. It's right there behind me. You're reading the talk, aren't you? But I'm going to try to give you a little context here. He begins with a little story. There are two young fish swimming along, and they happen to meet an older fish swimming the other way. And the older fish nods at them and says, "Morning, boys, how's the water?" And the two young fish swim on for a bit, and then eventually one of them looks over at the other and goes, What the heck is water? So Foster explains, okay, the point of the story and the point of his commencement speech is that sometimes the most obvious, important realities are often the ones that are hardest to see and hardest to talk about. And then he goes on with the passage that's on the screen that I'll read to you. He points out one of those obvious realities of life. Here's something else that's weird but true. In the day-to-day trenches of adult life, there's actually no such thing as atheism. And I want to take a moment to point out that this author, he's not a believer. He kind of dabbled in religion. He kind of explored Catholicism a little bit, but not a believer. He says there's no such thing as atheism. There's no such thing as not worshiping. Everybody worships. The only choice we get is what to worship. And the compelling reason for maybe choosing some sort of God or spiritual type thing to worship, be it Jesus Christ or Allah, be it Yahweh or the Wiccan Mother Goddess or the Four Noble Truths, or some invaluable set of ethical principles, is that pretty much anything else will eat you alive. If you worship money and things, if they are where you tap real meaning in life, then you will never have enough. You will never feel you have enough. It's the truth. Worship your body and beauty and sexual allure, and you will always feel ugly. And when time and age start showing, you will die a million deaths before they finally grieve you. Worship power, and you will end up feeling weak and afraid, and you will need ever more power over others to numb you to your own fear. Worship intellect, being seen as smart, and you will end up feeling stupid, a fraud, always on the verge of being found out. But the insidious thing about these forms of worship is not that they're evil or sinful or that they're unconscious. They are default settings. They are the kind of worship you just gradually slip into day after day, getting more and more selective about what you see and how you measure value without ever being fully aware of that's what you're doing. David Foster Wallace, what he does is he kind of sets religion aside in a sense, but I would say religion is a thing that can eat you alive as well. This label making that we do, I would suggest has a two-edged sword, two-edged blade. That the way we label others is almost certainly also the way we're labeling ourselves. And the way that we are valuing others is probably the way that we're valuing ourselves. So if it's wealth that we're chasing after, if that's how we're ascribing value to people, that's how we're going to value ourselves, by the amount of wealth that we have accumulated. If it's intellect, if that's the way we value people, that's how we're going to value ourselves. If it's beauty, if it's fame, if that's how we categorize people, we're going to do that to ourselves as well. I was trying to give some thought to what am I chasing after? I would encourage you to think about what you're chasing after. Here's what I often chase after. Here's how I often find my worth and my ability to please people. I'm a people pleaser. I want to make you happy. I want to please you. I want you to say to me, good job, well done, you're great. That's often how I find value in myself. And that's kind of sometimes like if you'll cooperate with me, if you'll play along with my script, we'll get along great. But I found there's some times in my life where that didn't work out. And then how did I treat those people? How did I approach those people when they weren't cooperating with, hey, Steve, you're great. You're doing a good job. Well done. I want to close with just thinking about this. What did Jesus offer this woman? A way to be satisfied. He says, I want to set you free from what you're pursuing here. I want to set you free from this path that will never satisfy you. And see, when we do that, when we can find our identity and our worth in Jesus Christ and his love for us, when we find our worth there, then all of a sudden our ambition can be set free from having to be a competitor against all of humanity. I'm not threatened by your success. That's not where my value comes from. I'm not threatened if you're better than me at anything, because my value and my worth comes from Jesus Christ. You can be smarter than me. You can have more money than me. You can look better than me. You can beat me in every category whatsoever. I don't find my value and my worth in that. My value and my worth is found in the living water of Jesus Christ. Have you experienced that? Have you considered that? So as we go into our time of response, Nancy, Haley, if you want to come forward, and as they just play a song for us and give us some time to reflect, are you experiencing a satisfaction that only comes from knowing and being known by a God whose love for you is not tied to your performance? Are you willing to lay down labels that you've put on yourself or others that have created walls of separation that keep you from loving people as your neighbor? Let me pray for us, and I'll give you some time just to reflect on that. Dear Lord, we thank you for this encounter with the woman at the well. We thank you that you saw her correctly. You saw her for who she was, her worth as an image bearer